Immersive horror games have really taken off in the last few years. You know the type of game I'm talking about. You're dropped into a first-person perspective, basically weaponless and defenseless, and your only chance of survival is to run and hide from whatever terror is chasing you down. Some notable releases have been the Slender games, Outlast, and of course the most notable in my opinion, Alien Isolation. This type of game is pretty much exactly what I was expecting when I started playing Among the Sleep. I did not expect to find myself in the midst of such an emotional experience. I don't want to jump too far off into the heavy stuff right away, so let's start with some of the boring stuff. You're going to play as our hero of the story, a baby. The baby is never really given a name, and in the cutscenes the baby is simply referred to as baby. So it's clear that you're a baby. Consequently, the controls and mechanics reflect such. Movements follow a standard WASD setup. However, as a baby, there is some mechanics that I felt really fit. In particular, crawling versus walking. Crawling is a much faster way to move around, and if you've ever had to care for a toddler for more than a minute, you'll know that this hits the nail on the head. A walking toddler is wobbly and slow, but a crawling toddler can vanish in a second. You can climb using the spacebar, and believe me, a toddler is much more agile than you might expect. Throughout the game, you're going to carry a teddy bear, named Teddy, of course. Teddy tells you that if you find that you're really scared, you can hug him by pressing F. Essentially, Teddy seems to act more as a flashlight than anything else. Teddy honestly never seemed to help fend off the monsters. Finally, the mouse is used to interact with your environment. You'll pick up objects using the left mouse button, and if you so desire, you can throw them using the right mouse button. I'll say this when it comes to matters of interaction. Among the Sleep seems to capture what it is to be a baby. There were moments when trying to move items that seemed really difficult, like there was actually some resistance. One of the best examples I believe that I can cite is there's this moment when you're in a playground level and you've got to open a toy chest, but you've really got to push, and you keep pushing and you keep pushing until you can finally open it up to get to what's inside. And this honestly made me think of my own kids, is whenever they were toddlers and they were trying to open their toy chest to get what was inside, watching them struggle and fight to do stuff like that sometimes. And honestly, it felt like a little victory when I finally opened the chest. All that to say that the game does a great job of conveying what it is mechanically to be a toddler. The game opens on your second birthday. Mommy is putting the finishing touches on your birthday cake. She sits, tells you happy birthday, exclaims how cute you are, and how much she loves you. Then she feeds you some of the cake in full choo-choo train mode naturally, and a knock comes to the door. It's interesting to see how the developers have chosen to convey the child's perspective and interpretation. The shaky vision and the distorted sound of what is clearly arguing. At first I just passed off the shaky vision as an aesthetic choice, but when I gave it more thought, I honestly think that this was meant to be tears welling up in the baby's eyes. Which makes sense. A 2-year-old overhearing an argument would naturally feel fear and probably react by crying. Mom returns to the table with a present, but it is not revealed who she is arguing with. However, I'm sure you'll make a logical guess, just as I did. Mom decides she's going to carry you and your present up to your room. She gives you a loving kiss, picks you up, and we're all headed upstairs. Once in the room, the phone rings. So Mom places you in the playpen and heads off to answer the call. You, of course, do your best Tommy Pickles impersonation and bust out of the playpen. This is when you meet Teddy. Teddy runs you through what is essentially a tutorial. You'll check out the music box by your crib, which ends up being kind of important. Soon, Teddy will decide that the two of you need to hide in the closet. At this point, I was honestly creeped out by Teddy, and I felt like he would somehow end up being your enemy. This is mostly because I was still in a traditional horror mindset. While hiding in the closet, Teddy explains that you can hug him if you ever really get scared, and you begin to explore and realize that your closet opens up to its own little world. Eventually, the closet door opens and it's Mommy. She puts you to bed, and the horror begins. And you groggily awaken to see your new friend Teddy being taken away and carried out of your room. Somehow, the crib seems to tip over and you are free to embark on this adventure. Following the sounds of someone drowning, you find Teddy trapped in the washing machine. Choking on water, Teddy expresses some concern. Something's not right. We need to find your mother. You take Teddy and begin to explore the house in an effort to find and possibly save your mother from whatever is going on. As you explore the house, you'll eventually make your way downstairs. From the vantage point of a toddler, a house at night is a very creepy place. You'll crawl through the kitchen and find no sign of your mother, so you make your way into her bedroom. You'll discover that she is gone. Where is she? Does the monster have her? It is likely that you will explore the closet in her room at this point, and you'll find one of your first clues as to what may be going on. As you'll leave the room, you'll catch your first glimpse of the monster. It happens really fast, so don't blink. You'll eventually hear your mother humming a tune, and honestly there was something slightly unnerving about it. If you follow the sound, you will discover a ghostly apparition of your mother. After checking the ghost out, you will end up with your mother's locket in your inventory. You'll need that shortly. Follow the drain pipe to what appears to be some sort of kid's dimension. The playhouse is the key to finding out what is going on with your mother. Inside the playhouse is a door with 4 containers. Place the locket in the chamber. This will act as a key to the door. The trick is, you can only open the door by simultaneously pressing the button with the help of Teddy. Once the door opens, it will lead you to a new realm, which will contain the next component to open the door yet again. You learn that each item is representative of some sort of memory you have with your mother. The memory reveals itself as another ghostly figure. So the goal is usually to find your way to the memory so that you can move on to the next stage. Basically, you find the item linked to the memory, bring it back to the playhouse, and use it as a key to open the door. Wash, rinse, repeat. At first, the monster is more or less a distant entity, but more and more you'll get a sense that the monster is lurking closer than you may think. In the next stage, you'll begin to get a sense of what is truly going on more and more. You may even encounter the monster at some point. First stage is a park level. The level features a simple counterweight puzzle. Basically hunt down all the owls and use them to hold down the seesaw, crawl up the freshly made ramp, and onto the memory of your mother. The next level appears to be a mishmash of the indoors and the outdoors. This one is a little trickier than the last. You must find the missing pieces of the actual puzzle to open the paths to find the other pieces. That will in turn eventually lead you to the path to find the memory. This is the first time you really run the risk of encountering the monster. Once again, Among the Sleep solidifies the theme of child's imagination by having the keys to the locks actually be a toddler's toy keys. Once you escape and reopen the playhouse door, you'll move on to a stage that seems to resemble a library. This time the monster is much more aggressive and is noticeably agitated. It appears that the beast actively chases you. Moving as quickly as possible and hiding under furniture seemed to help me evade the monster more efficiently. This level wasn't very difficult, to be honest, once I figured out that hiding seemed to be the best choice. Finally, it is on to level 3, and this level is much more difficult than its predecessors. The puzzles are a bit more difficult, and the environment is really strange. And of course, the monster is much easier to alert. There's even a part where you have to crawl through an area with glass bottles everywhere. Knock one down and you'll catch the attention of the monster. Just when you think you finally made it to the end, the monster shows up behind you, and in an effort to save you, Teddy loses an arm. I think at this point it bears mentioning that this game deals with some pretty heavy issues, most notably divorce, alcoholism, abuse, and even neglect. When the game began and the visitor showed up at the door, I made an assumption that was later proven to be slightly inaccurate. And honestly, that assumption was further solidified when I crawled into the closet and found the portrait of what I assumed to be my mother and father. But there were hints that I was obviously too thick to pick up on at first. Crawling through the kitchen when I was searching for my mother, there were bottles in all the cabinets, and I of course jumped to the conclusion, hey, this is an indie title, they're just using these bottles as filler. But I was wrong, and I firmly believe that the producers of this game were sending a message. These hints continue to drop in the puzzle level. If you pay attention to the portraits as you make your way down the hallways, you get a strong indication of what or who the monster really is. This was, at least for me, when I finally got it. In the final act of the game, the truth is clear as crystal. It's apparent that your parents are splitting up, and it looks like a big reason for that is that your mother is abusing alcohol. Furthermore, the stress of the breakup is causing her to abuse it more and more, and she may have even been guilty of lashing out at you physically. The game ends on a hopeful but still sad note. Dad shows up, and it looks like you're going to stay with him. But it's sad because it seems like Mom may continue to struggle. At least that's what I thought until I played through the prologue. If you play through the prologue, you'll see that it appears that there was a lot of turmoil in the home, and neither of your parents was handling things very well at all. My 6-year-old happened to be in the room during the final moments of the game. He was incredibly confused as to why a mommy would push her baby. He and I ended up having a very heavy and emotional conversation. Among the Sleep does a solid job of showing alcoholism and abuse through the eyes of a child. The way a child's imagination may alter their perception of such events. The way a child might draw pictures depicting things he or she has experienced. And of course, the way a teddy bear can become your hero. All of these were conveyed in a manner that is completely believable to me. I also really appreciate that this game took my expectations of what a game of this type would be and turned it completely on its head. As an aside, let me encourage you to check out the museum section of the game. There you will find and learn tons of information about the game's production and more about the themes and messages the team hoped to convey. You also get to play through the alternate ending, which was a little bit more like what I was expecting when I started. Honestly, I prefer the direction that they ended up sticking with. While playing through this game, I was reminded of a game that also deals with alcoholism and abuse, Papo and Yo. Whereas Among the Sleep touches more on the fear and helplessness from the perspective of a young child, Papo and Yo seems to focus more on the dual nature of an alcoholic parent. One second you have the best dad in the world, the next he's a total monster. It's worth a play. You may want to check it out. I purchased Among the Sleep a few years ago. It was in one of the many bundles I've nabbed. I figured it was going to be your run-of-the-mill horror game. Instead, I ended up with a deeply emotional experience, especially as a parent. This is one I'm definitely glad I played through, and I hope others will consider playing it. Among the Sleep stands as a beacon to the ability of games to deal with very heavy emotional topics in much the same way, and maybe even better, than other forms of entertainment media. When the dust settled and the game was finished, I found myself looking rather introspectively at my performance as a father and husband. I really ended up examining how my children may perceive my actions. As a parent, a spouse, hell, as a human being, I've come far from hitting the mark several times. But did I always try my best? Or were there moments that I threw up my hands and completely gave up? Were there moments that my kids would have viewed me as some kind of monster? I certainly hope not.